Yeah, 'cause
Final
yeah.
Fantasy
All right, let's
7.
move on.
Yeah, let's move. Final
Yeah.
Fantasy 7. So, for those
Yeah.
who saw me
Con-
on
con-
Monday,
Congratulations, finally.
finally finished it, and it
Mile High
was
Club.
yes, I did it, and it was an ending that was extremely satisfying. It was kind of interesting too because as I was mentioning on my stream, it was the game that actually started my streaming on Twitch. So to have it come like to a close, at least for this chapter, was very, very interesting and very meaningful for myself. Definitely took me longer than it should have, but I guess because I kept, switching things out and playing other
Yeah.
things and all that stuff like that. But regardless of the fact, finally beat it and um, thoughts about it. So it's everything that I remembered, at least from my jacked up memory, that I remember from the original. They definitely added a lot of nuances and new things in there. Like, I don't know, maybe you can help fill in the gaps for me.
Yeah.
Were the whispers ever a big thing from the last one? From the original?
Okay. So hold on before we really get started.
Okay.
Everybody who
Oh
has
yes,
not beat this
spoiler alert,
game,
please. Yes.
this is made. We're in spoiler
Yes.
territory.
Yes. Yeah.
I wish we had like a little thing or something to throw on the screen, say like spoiler
I
time.
I, I don't. Yeah.
We'll work on that for next time we do
Yeah.
one of these.
Yeah.
But basically like so. How do we want to start? Do we want to start? Let's start with reactions first. So
Yeah.
I'll answer your question, but that'll be the next part where we talk about like what's actually going on because no, the short answer is no,
Right.
and I'll explain why the whispers are important
Yeah.
because it ties into everything in a different way and it ties into the interviews saying
Uh,
that this game doesn't exist within the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. And that's a
okay.
very important distinction to notice
Okay.
because the
Interesting.
compilation of Final Fantasy VII wraps around original Final Fantasy VII perfectly. Advent Children doesn't relate to this, and we'll go into why.
Okay, and
But
that actually might even tie into another question I have. But anyway, okay. So overall impressions and all that. All right. So someone asked me recently, um, do you like Final Fantasy VII Remake because of the nostalgia, or is it really a good game? So I
hmm,
had to think about this for a bit, because I think it's easy for us to get caught into that nostalgia that makes us
yeah,
love something, right? Regardless if it's good or
or
not.
fanboyism.
Or
I mean,
fanboyism, right?
I'm a
Um,
Final Fantasy nut.
yeah, so it's easy for me to understand why you love this game, and you
Yeah,
think it's like a really great game. I'm half of a Final Fantasy nut, like I haven't played
yeah,
all of them. I played bits of a lot of them, but I've never really like
yeah.
dedicated a lot of time. The only Final Fantasy game I dedicated time to was 7 originally on the PlayStation and then on the PSP later on. And then I think on the Nintendo, I was very dedicated to um, the first US release of Final Fantasy,
Oh
which,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So,
G original.
yeah. And
True one before they started getting crazy with their numbering
with
in
the
the US.
numbering and, yeah, bringing things back. So yeah. So the first
Three
final,
is 6 and 2 is 4. It's like
yeah, like,
what?
I don't understand what's happening. But
Well, I
yeah.
didn't understand until like PlayStation. It's like seven's coming out. It's like, wait, but there's only 1, 2, and 3 already. What happened
Yeah.
to
What
4,
happened to
5, and
4, 5, and
6?
6? I know. Yeah.
1,
But
2,
yeah.
3, 7. It's like, wait, what?
Like I forgot, like we forgot how to count. Anyway, fast forward, move into the future.
7.
Yeah, but yeah, the first Final Fantasy was another great one. So I remember really being
Yeah,
involved in that. So if I took myself out of it, right,
yeah,
and I looked at the gameplay itself, how the story flowed, I think I still like it
yeah,
because it was a very cinematic experience from start to finish, and I
yeah,
like games like that. I like games that you know put you in the moment. They put you in the
yeah.
world, and I think with the mixture of the gameplay itself, the
Hmm.
cinematics, the way that they structured the fight scenes and the battle scenes, and even the inclusion of your party members, like switching
Yeah,
them out during certain times or whatever the case is, made it feel so cinematic to me that it was like
yeah.
a great flow from start to finish. Now, adding on top of me being a huge Final Fantasy fan, especially for 7, it made me love it even more. So it really drove it up there. Now, is it a game that everyone is gonna love? Maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
It
No.
it depends on what their comfort level is in playing an RPG or what they're expecting from an RPG.
I think it's definitely more accessible than turn-based Final Fantasies for sure.
Right.
I think it's more accessible than even Final Fantasy 15, which was supposed to be the accessible Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
at least in terms of like modern Final Fantasies. Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's probably more accessible for people who weren't Final Fantasy fans than people who were
Right.
at times.
Yeah. And I can get that because it is easier to play and get into than one of the original Final Fantasies because it's a lot of
Yeah,
like stuff that you have to be paying attention to and be
exactly.
mindful of and all that stuff like that. Um, those who are, and I know you hate when I say this, but those who are familiar with like Kingdom Hearts and love that type of gameplay style can easily get into this game in a way just because of the motion and the way that
I,
you
I
have
think
to do the
I
battle
think
scenes.
they might, if people want slower combat that they haven't been getting from Kingdom Hearts, this is definitely the game to go to.
Yeah,
You want fast and frantic. Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15 is where you can get your
sure.
fast and frantic
Yeah,
gameplay. But if you're looking for something that's a pace slower and more thought out, because you actually have to think, stop, cast spells and things like that.
hmm
In Kingdom Hearts, you can go ham honestly, and you'll be okay most of the time.
100%, 100%. The great thing about this is that you do have a little bit of that combat style, but you
Yeah,
still have to be very tactical on how you do certain things. You saw me.
exactly.
I had to like always stop and be like, all right, this
Yep.
guy is weak to this. I should pay attention to this guy. All right, who on my team has
Yeah.
what? And then I have to make sure that this person battles this one
Oh
while
yeah.
this other person focuses on this other guy. And it has
Yeah.
enough of that to really make it feel like I'm playing an RPG. You know,
Yeah, but
um,
I definitely feel like, especially because of more modern JRPGs,
yeah,
I've gotten very used to the whole fact that it's like you have to source out where their weaknesses are,
yeah,
and it's very vital for success in this game.
yeah,
If you don't find their weak point, you're gonna be stuck in this battle at least 2 to 3 times longer than you really want to or should be.
yeah. Like I'll be completely honest with you. Like in my previous plays of the original Final Fantasy VII, I did not use that SS material a lot. This one, I used it like religiously.
Religiously in this one. First off, it's like most of the enemies, it's I'm either gonna hit you with regular attack most
Yeah,
of the time, or if you're something robotic, I'm 99% sure Bolt. Bolt is your weakness.
yeah,
Just gonna cast lightning,
hmm
you're gonna take it. But yeah, man,
yeah.
it's so.
So yeah,
Guess I'll
so
go in
yeah.
on.
Well, just to close off, um, all that being said, too, the additional stuff that they added into
Yeah.
extending the storylines, or just seeing like parts of the story that you never saw fully fleshed
Yes.
out, was such a unique experience and actually made the game much more fun and interesting for me.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that happens at the honeybee and all that stuff. Like
Oh
like
yeah, man. That
seeing that fleshed out even more in depth.
well, even seeing the slums
Yeah,
actually fully developed. It's
yeah,
like, because remember, we don't know what happens between the different load screens because there's technically screens screens between the screens that we
right,
never get to see because
right,
it's old school style. They're just moving you along as quickly as they can
right,
to like the main areas they want you to like experience.
right. Yep. hmm So yeah,
So
so those are just my overall thoughts and all that. I loved
yeah,
it. I loved it 100%. I loved
yeah.
it. I cannot wait for part 2, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But then,
So yeah. So my thoughts, I actually have three perspectives on it. I
mhm,
have it as just a game alone. Um, it as someone who played the original and just an opinion on it as a Final Fantasy fan,
mhm,
or at least so it who played the original and the other Final Fantasy 7 stuff, because that's a different group than just a Final Fantasy fan in general too, because that group also ended up dividing a bit too. There are people who came back for the Final Fantasy 7 game specifically and didn't come back for the rest of the franchise.
right.
But for those who like, or this is coming in, it's just a straight action RPG. Honestly, the game is a strong standalone.
Hmm.
It's a very strong, solid game. The gameplay, they build you up to everything. They're not just throwing you into the mechanics. Everything has a build up to it.
Yeah.
The areas are well designed. The story is very cinematic. And yeah, if you're new to it, it does jump the shark a little bit in some places, but there's reasons for that. And those scenes actually aren't intended for the new player.
Hmm.
They're actually intended for the fans.
Hmm.
So it's an enjoyable game, gameplay and all that. That's what I can say about it from the general game perspective. The story's solid. It does a lot of interesting setup, and it ends with a nice, strong cliffhanger for those who are
Oh
ready
yeah.
for a part two.
Hmm.
As a Final Fantasy VII player now, it is literally what I want from a remake and more because, unfortunately, spoiler territory again, another warning. The title remake doesn't actually stand for a remake of Final Fantasy VII. It actually stands for a remake of the history within Final Fantasy VII,
Yeah.
which gets close to the end of the game's thing, which the whispers, which will go into more detail about those story beats.
Yeah.
But as a fan of Final Fantasy VII, I enjoyed they build on all the world and everything, but those flashes, you also get things that happen in this game that don't happen and are rearranged, but they're rearranged in a way that works. You get to experience and see places that you only got to see as one giant overhead
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
Now you're on the ground on the slums. You're actually walking around in Sector 7 and experiencing it like you never did before.
Yeah.
And I'll admit there is there is filler. If there is definitely filler to bulk out this
Sure.
game. Hojo's lab is where I felt it the most.
Hmm.
Most other places, it's like side quests or side quests. I'm all right with that,
Hmm.
but I felt like Hojo's lab felt like filler.
Yeah.
In all honesty, to me,
Yeah. I mean, that
like
section
the
took me
train
a
gravy.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All the other sections, they definitely felt like they elongated those sections,
Hmm.
but it wasn't for the worse. It actually made them feel more alive, more insightful, able to add in more story beats.
Hmm.
A lot of the characters had a lot of interesting development and setup.
Yeah.
Um, you're given things in the plot a lot earlier than you are in the original game,
Hmm.
but that'll go back to the story beats because, spoiler, Remake's actually a low-key sequel to Advent Children. And I'll
Yeah.
explain that more in story when we get to the story bit.
Yeah.
And then just as an overall Final Fantasy fan, it feels like the next entry in the franchise. Like going from 15 to this, it doesn't feel like we're going back in time to get a remake.
Hmm.
It feels like, hey, this is the next release in the franchise. This is technically holding 16 spot until they get to 16. So for me, it feels like, oh, we're just getting, yeah, it's episodic, but it's also a full on Final Fantasy. This is our next main Final Fantasy release to hold us over until they figure out what's going on with 16
Yeah.
or what they're going to show is 16.
The next
Atheon.
installment of the series, right?
Yeah, Atheon.
Yeah.
What?
Hey, I don't know. No, I just don't want you to get your hopes up, man.
Look, they could call it Final Fantasy and the Crystal Skull. I'll buy
Ooh.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, but it's
Yeah.
look. I bought 12, and it's one of the regrets that I still buy it every time it's released too in like more modern formats, but 12 is a rough one for me. I'll be honest with you. 12 is the roughest Final Fantasy for me. There could be a lot of people who are gonna be mad at me for saying this, but it boring. I didn't want to play a political drama, and unfortunately, I just got Final Fantasy: The Politics, the game,
Hot
and
take.
it just bored the hell out of me. It's just like I just want to, like there's politics in Final Fantasy, but like this was just pure on hardcore politics. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't. It was just that was a rough one for me. But
Okay.
as a Final Fantasy fan, 7 Remake definitely is meant to fill that gap that they had before the next numbered franchise.
Yeah.
Because 15 took longer than they thought. Remake took longer than they thought. Kingdom Hearts 3 took longer than they thought. Like they had a lot of major heavy hitters come out this generation, but it was sparse in terms of quantity compared to the PS3 PS3 was also a little sparse too, but PS3 and PS2 had a lot more Final Fantasy titles released, though they didn't have as much in terms of like the franchise moving forward in terms of numbers.
Hmm.
Like the PS3 only had 13 and the two other games based in the same world,
Yeah.
and 14 at the very tail end,
Right.
which also overlapped into the PS4. But again, that's an MMO, so that doesn't really fill the franchise need for a lot of the those interested.
Right. Right.
But this definitely fills that. And if you play Final Fantasy VII, you're gonna get a lot of more lore and insight into the things that you wondered more about.
Yeah.
While the original Final Fantasy VII felt like cliff notes after playing this feels like your full on like Game of Thrones version of Final Fantasy VII, where you're getting a massive chunk out of a small part of the game.
Yeah. No, I and in that aspect, I can feel it because I feel like I know more now about at least where we are in up until where we are in the story, much
Yeah.
more than I felt when I was playing the original, for sure. Even when
Oh yeah.
yeah, even when I finished the original, I still was like confused and lost in certain things. And,
Hmm.
I felt like I had to read up on, this and that, or talk to people like you to kind of like fill in the gaps. Like, what did I miss? And all that stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I feel like they're doing such a great job in like making sure you are taking everything in that they want you to within this lore of the
Oh
Final
yeah.
Fantasy VII universe, right? Um, and
They
even
let you know what the honeybee inn really
Oh my
is.
God. And I again, I being able to play through in more depth that whole entire part was just like, wow.
And my fear was they were going to censor the game because people don't realize 7 has the most cursing out of every
Yeah.
Final Fantasy. It's
Yeah.
just that it is censored, but it's censored in a way that it's like, oh, I know what that word is. Ooh, that's 4 letters. I know what word that is because of the
Yeah.
context it's used in. Here, they drop a lot of cursing
They were
more
not
than you have in
yeah.
most Final Fantasy. Like playing 15, I actually realized 15 has a lot of cursing as well too, but it's not as noticeable as 7's
Yeah.
remake, where those who played 7, it's like a lot of the same cursing beats are hit. There are going to be no F bombs. So, unfortunately, they're going to have to revamp a lot of Sid's script. Because Sid, oh my gosh, that dude dropped F bombs like it was going out of style in the original.
Or maybe they won't. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll keep it.
Or they'll find ways to like bleep him out with just like things passing by while he's
Oh,
about
see
to say it.
now that
It's
would
like,
be funny. Yeah, that would be
it's like
funny.
this mother like
Right. And he
freaking
just keeps
passes
going and
by.
going. Yeah. Yeah. Quickly before we continue here, Val said that I swear, Paul, I buy Resident Evil 4 on every console it comes out on. So I guess Val, for you, Resident Evil, that's
Yeah.
your go-to always.
Sounds like our friend Pete.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, yeah,
He'll be so mad at like half of them, and yet he'll still play and beat them and do everything in them, and
yeah, yeah,
can't help it.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. What is that game for me that I do that for? I don't know. I would have to like
Oh
really think
man,
about it. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I
it
have to
probably
really.
isn't even a game. It's probably like a movie or something.
Oh,
Like
Star
that one
Wars.
movie.
Star
Yeah,
Wars.
you'll
Yeah,
you'll buy Star Wars in any way, shape, form,
A
in
hundred
any
percent,
time.
100%. I own it on VHS, two different versions. I own the laser disc not only from the U.S. but from Japan. I have the original DVDs. I have 4 sets of the original DVDs, and then when they finally came out on Blu-ray, I have that, and then I purchased them separately digitally.
Yeah. Like I got the first Blu-ray collection that came out, and it's just like, and now I have to get the massive box of the Skywalker saga because like I skipped the last 3 because I was just waiting for the box to get all of them.
Yeah. See, I don't
So
know if
for
I,
me it makes sense.
yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna get that one though. I think I've hit my peak already.
You say that, you see a great deal and you're
Now
gonna
if
be like,
if it's
"Oh,
on
Black
sale,
Friday
like,
deal."
okay, yeah, it's mine.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm waiting on most of the Final Fantasies on Steam. I'm waiting for them to get to that sweet spot of
Yeah,
Steam sale so I can own them again for no reason.
yeah.
Though it's the
No,
only way to play the 13 games outside of a PS3.
right. No, that's true. That is
But
true. Yeah.
yeah, I guess now's a good time for us to go into spoilery explaining story stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I guess let's just start off with the questions I have, because obviously
Yeah.
I'm the
Oh
one
yeah.
who's going to unveil a lot of the spoilery
Yeah.
stuff that you can help explain and all that. So,
And playing Crisis Core and seeing Advent Children both versions several times, I have a lot of insight on what's going down too.
yeah, you are my go-to reference when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously the first question I had was with the whole Whispers thing, because I never remember that at all being part of the
They're
original
not in
game,
there.
which they're not.
As someone who's being 7, 8 times, like I even am at the very end of the PS4 version
Yeah.
of regular 7. I was just like, I can't do it again. Like it's like I already have Knights of the Round, and I just don't feel like fighting Ruby and Emerald for the 5 millionth time and slaughtering them. It just lost its charm after 499 times of massacring them.
Right. So
I'm still
that's
gonna do it
one.
eventually,
Oh, I
but
know you will. I have no doubt about that.
oh, their time's coming. It's just I don't feel like right now.
And then the second thing that unveiled at the end was
Yeah.
the whole Zack storyline. Like I thought
Ah,
that I was like, wait a minute, I know who this
those
guy is, but was this a big part of the original? And I,
so this goes into Crisis Core territory, which
yeah,
honestly, as a 7 fan, if you can find a way, which if you own a physical copy, you're allowed to emulate things you own physical copies of. I would never say people should pirate copies of digital games. You should always own games that you're going to emulate and make back legal backups of them that you can potentially play on your computer. Moving on from that,
up,
little
up.
tidbit, because
We
rather avoid the lawyers.
all of a sudden the stream is cut. Sorry, no.
It's like it's all like you and Empire Strikes Back all over again.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
Moving on.
but so both of those things actually go hand in hand. The whispers represent fate and things challenging fate.
Hmm.
Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually the story of Sephiroth trying to remake the timeline. The Sephiroth who lost in Advent Children found a way to have his spirit travel back in time.
Damn.
Aerith's spirit has also traveled back in time, so it's a time travel tale.
So that's why Aerith seems to kind of know what's happening.
She's in the know because she's either talking to her spirit self who came back in time who's informing her, or her spirit self and her are sharing the same body at the same time.
Wow.
That's why there's a certain cutscene that I don't know if you got before you went up the shaft. Did you get a scene with Tifa at Aerith's house?
Tifa in Aerith's house. What do you mean go up the shaft?
So before you climb up to go to save Aerith,
Yeah.
did you have a scene with Tifa or Aerith in the flower yard?
Oh no, I did not.
There is a scene that if you get it with Aerith,
Uh-huh.
she literally says, "You can't fall in love with me, Cloud. The last thing
No,
you
I
need to
didn't get
do
that.
is fall in love with me."
Wow.
She is in the that was the scene that made it 100% sure for me because I had a feeling the whispers were trying to make sure time stayed on course
Mm-hmm.
and fate stayed on course at the tower of Sector 7 bombing when they were
Hmm.
going to break the pillar down.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when I knew it's just like this is a time travel tale. This is not a game that's a pure remake. This is a sequel that takes place after Sector 7. There are people who have gone back in time
Mm-hmm.
who are now playing key roles because Aerith knew about Marlene.
Mm-hmm.
And people who could chalk it up, it's like, oh, but she's an ancient. She's in commune with the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But the earth shouldn't know where Marlene is and what's about to happen. The spirits of earth of this time, of the Gaia, the planet of this time, don't know the future. Another thing that made me question it was Cloud had a dream of inside of the crater
Mm-hmm.
when all the dudes in robes are moving to the crater at the beginning of disc 2
Mm-hmm.
for the reunion.
Mm.
That's what caused the first suspicion. It's like, why is Cloud seeing the future right now? This is odd because I knew that was a scene of the future.
But that's because
Because
you
in,
but that's because you played
7, because I played 7, I knew this scene happened so late in the game.
Yeah.
Why is Cloud having a flash of it? Is it trying to show a flash of luring him there? But then it didn't make sense. It's like, but this is clearly the crater. No one's made it to the crater yet. People don't start moving towards Sephiroth until he revives in Midgar
Right.
after killing President Shinra.
Right.
All the dudes in cloaks start making moves after President Shinra dies.
Right.
Because there's something that happens that causes the Sephiroth moment to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's Cloud's interaction with Jenova that stirs things or something. But at that point, there's something in the original 7 that catalysts Sephiroth's awakening and all the dudes with cloaks working their way to the crater.
So that's why, like, especially earlier on in my playthrough, we talked about it where it's like we weren't expecting Sephiroth to be such a bigger presence this earlier on, right?
And because it's like, oh, maybe they're just trying to get him involved in the game earlier because he is the main villain and they're building him up more. And initially, I thought that too the first time you see him, because you see him in a scene that makes no sense for him to be there.
Yeah. And that was so early.
And it's very offsetting.
Yeah.
It's just like, wait, what? But it's just like you also have moments where Cloud also has a spirit kind of communing with him where he has the headaches and you don't realize what it is until later in the game.
Yeah.
But it's not Sephiroth. That one's still not Sephiroth. And it becomes clear in Advent Children Complete, it was Zack. Zack is always the spirit guiding Cloud. Hence why Cloud has Zack's memories, because Zack protects Cloud and overlooks Cloud. But unfortunately, because of the Mako poisoning, Cloud lost sense of himself. So Zack's spirit kind of filled in the void, which is why he acts like Zack.
Interesting.
There's some it gets flushed in a lot of different materials.
Right.
There's even books that fill in some of the blanks too.
Right.
But basically, the whispers are there to maintain time.
And it's Sephiroth who's breaking it.
Sephiroth, and because of Sephiroth, Aerith as well are now breaking time. When something happens that's about to break the timeline, that's when the whispers get super active. And that's why you had to face them. And what you did was you broke timeline and fate. But you didn't break fate and time in a single timeline continuum. You broke it across the multiverse. So original 7's timeline is still intact, because that timeline has to exist for Sephiroth to know to come back to this timeline.
Right.
But 7 is now a multiverse because you guys broke another timeline, which is why Zack, who should have died in that fight.
Exactly.
You saw him exhausted and he was like, wait, that's it? No. Shinra has unlimited resources. I know, I played that battle. Unlimited resources they throw at Zack. Zack dies. At that point, he is supposed to die because that informs who Cloud is and why Cloud is the way he is.
Right.
Part 2 is going to be very interesting because you now have a multiverse situation. Zack is alive in a different universe, but Aerith could feel him through the multiverse.
Right.
This Aerith is contaminated in a way that she can feel time and space. And is that what the power of the Ancients really is? The ability to not only feel the presence of the Earth, but to feel time and space itself too.
Right.
Who knows? But it's called Remake because a certain person is trying to remake
history. Oh, that's so fascinating.
It's a subtitle, not an actual thing.
Sure.
And it explains why the article says this 7 exists outside of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII series.
Right.
Because none of it can happen, because that series informs this one, but this one doesn't need that one to exist because everything's different now.
Right.
We don't know where this one's going to end, and that's the fun additions they created for people who want a new storyline out of 7's world.
Right.
You still get a lot of the old, but with a lot of new.
Now with a new twist to it. And which is the way you explained it now makes so much more sense. And I don't know if it was something that no, I think I was picking up a little bit of here and there, but I just needed that clarification because I never played Crisis Core.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't really like enthrall myself in a lot of like the story and all that.
Definitely watch the highlights of Crisis Core. It's definitely worth it. It informs a lot of story to
Yeah.
7 itself.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, it's one of the most enduring stories of the whole 7 compilation. Like Dirge of Cerberus was story-wise, it wasn't bad, but it was a clunky game and it was
Hmm.
interesting. It had a lot of interesting aspects, but it didn't really add because it took place after Advent Children. It's like you get to see the world one more time after Advent Children, but it
Yeah.
didn't add anything to it.
Yeah.
Crisis Core adds a lot to 7 and it pulls on the heartstrings. It adds a lot to the conflict between Wutai and Midgar.
Hmm.
It adds a lot to that conflict. It
Interesting.
adds a lot to the world. You also get to see a lot of other characters that inform the world. You also get to see Sephiroth's decline
Hmm.
up close and personal. You're there for the decline.
Right. Right.
Like you don't see it through Cloud's flashbacks, which are technically tainted because they're mix of his
Yeah,
and
makes and
Zack's.
Zax. Right. Yeah.
You
Uh,
actually see it up front, but
right.
you also see Cloud and Zack form that relationship of being like brothers.
Right.
You
Yeah.
see how they meet. You see how their relationship builds. You see how like they always spent time together. Why it was important for Zack to make sure Cloud lived.
Hmm.
Cloud was like a younger brother to him.
Right.
It's why you see him in Advent Children Complete. It's like, come on, Cloud, is that really all you have? Remember the soldier way. It's just like, and yeah, it doesn't matter you were a soldier. It's what you have inside that matters. Like a older brother giving encouragement.
Right.
Like
So, wow.
Crisis Core adds so much to the saga, and so does Advent Children Complete. Regular Advent Children was a little bit of a mess because it was missing a lot of the important connections.
Hmm.
Advent Children Complete is the one to watch. It's the one they released on Blu-ray. Honestly, you could probably get it for $6 now, or rent it for, or buy it off PSN for $5 or something.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think digitally they have it
Yeah,
available
I
like that.
mean
Yeah.
that movie is the quintessential. Like that's the quintessential version to watch, and it adds so much more.
Hmm.
But also it ties up all the relationships. And this game lets you know it's just like, oh, you thought that was the last of Sephiroth. He promised at the end of Advent Children, it's like, oh, I'll be back. I'll keep coming back. And Cloud was like, and I'll always be there to stop you. Except that this Cloud has none of the memories. He has flashes of future Cloud, but he has none of the memories.
Hmm.
This Cloud is actually at a disadvantage memory wise, but for some reason, this Cloud, as I told you, is almost as strong as end of original Final Fantasy VII Cloud.
Right, which is another comment I had when I was playing it on Monday. I was like, I never remembered Cloud being this strong, like when I was
No,
playing the original. But he is like way above and beyond, like you
at
know,
this point, he was like level 20
yeah.
if you really pushed your leveling. But like the Cloud you see here is the one that knew he had no chance against Sephiroth,
Hmm.
even through like battling against Rufus, which you still struggled with the Rufus battle
Right,
because
yeah,
this Rufus showed you how he stood toe to toe with Cloud. He
yeah,
was tricky.
hmm,
He was a tricky like fighter.
right,
Still hard for Cloud to deal with because he's tricky, but he wasn't like impenetrable, and you still were able to overpower him because you're still soldier. But you shouldn't have been able to stand toe to toe with any version of Sephiroth at this point
hmm,
because you all got knocked out of the way by all the other Sephiroth clones you saw along the way.
yeah,
So the fact that this Cloud is phasing, teleporting almost to the point of an Omni Slash, he is like maybe a few skill sets away from being able to perform Omni Slash,
hmm,
and you're only technically 1/10 of the way through the game of 7.
yeah, yeah, and that was
And he's
yeah, that was like another thing, like when you brought because you just said it now. I made that comment and I was like, he's so fast. He's like Goku speed, And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember Cloud ever being able to do that before at this
at this
point in
point,
this storyline.
he was still basic slashes,
Yeah.
dodging, blocking, and basic combat.
Hmm.
He wasn't to this crazy teleporting speed moment,
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing you saw in that Advent Children fight once he regained his full strength of
Right.
being healed from the virus he had.
Yeah.
When he was actually fighting Sephiroth, and him and Sephiroth are on buildings and they're just clashing super
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
You are almost at that level of Cloud, like 5 years too early.
Mm-hmm. It's to hear the way you explain it and break it down, like I said, it makes so much more sense, but it also makes me realize I really don't know a lot of that other stuff. So as someone, so here's a question for you then,
Yeah.
and Mephistus kind of alludes to it also, in his recent comment.
Yeah.
Let's say you're brand new to this whole series, like you're a
Yeah.
fresh person coming in. You know, you
Yes.
hear everyone talking about Final Fantasy VII and Remake and all that, and you decide to pick it up and play it. As a
Yeah.
brand new player, is this something that's going to hit you? Are you going to make these realizations at all, or are you going to be just as lost and probably need to go backwards and have to
All right.
relive some of the other stuff?
So, it, yes and no. This is a tough topic, or at least subject matter,
Mm-hmm.
or this part of the topic is hard because are you going to be lost? In some ways, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going because you are missing the history of the world itself.
Mm-hmm.
In other ways, the game can be played on its own. And I say anyone who's already started Remake, do not go back and play regular 7 yet. Wait. Wait till it finishes. Enjoy it for what it is right now because there is a solid standalone story.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, we have the appreciation to see the other nuance hidden behind it.
Yeah.
Me, as someone who has experienced this entire saga from one game to another, I'm seeing a lot of things just connect even further. And that's why it hit me so early. This is time travel.
Mm.
Besides the fact that I've played enough time travel Final Fantasies and Chrono Trigger games or Chrono games to know
You picked up
time
on the
travel when it
beats.
hits you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, like the things Earth were doing, at first it was like, oh, it's odd. But then it was like, no, this isn't odd for her being an ancient. This stuff is odd because she knows. She knows the history. Why does she know? Then all of a sudden there was some subtle Sephiroth beats. It's like he knows too.
Mm-hmm.
The fact he showed Cloud Meteor in the simulator proved this wasn't the Sephiroth of this time. You have two Sephiroths in play right now. And part of me thinks some of the whispers are part of old Sephiroth.
Yeah.
The Sephiroth of the time who's like, wait, why are you getting in my way? Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't really fully recognize who this Sephiroth is.
Interesting.
So you have a lot of competing ideals, but outside of that, I think someone could go into the game and enjoy it without any of the history because you have time travel. You have these ghost things that are harassing people. You have someone who has insight onto what's going on in the world, but it's because you find out she's an ancient. So it makes sense she knows about the world. And she never crosses the line and tells you she knows the past and the future because she's experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
They never blatantly tell you it's like she knows the future.
Yeah.
And honestly, the future, some of it may still be set in stone. She may still be on the tail end of something that might not be great. She might not be.
Yeah.
We don't know. And for those of us who have experienced the original 7, we have the ability to potentially experience it again. First off, I know your heart dropped as soon as you saw Barrett get the L.
Oh my God. 100%.
And for new players, they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible for Barrett. Am I not
Yeah.
going to be able to use him again?
Yeah.
And then you see the whisper come out of him because it saved him.
Yeah.
But we knew it's just like, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
None of this makes sense. Why am I fighting Genova now? What the hell is going on?
Mm-hmm.
This is where, for original fans, the wheels came off the wagon. It's like, what the hell is this? Because we were still following 90% of the story beats up till then.
Yeah.
Except for Wedge being alive. That's what definitely guaranteed to me. It's like, Wedge shouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm glad you actually said that. Yeah.
Wedge didn't live
Right.
past the tower falling.
Right.
And then the point driven home even further, which happened after they broke Fate, so did Biggs.
Right.
And we have Jesse's glove on the counter, which is confusing too.
Yeah.
So it's like all of that is very confusing stuff. And it's just like none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
And for those who experience 7, it's like they broke the timelines change and it doesn't make sense. For those who don't know 7, it's just like, oh, a lot of interesting things going. Oh, this dude survived. Good for him.
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming in with a clear perspective where they can appreciate the things that are going on as they are.
Yeah.
They should not play 7, in my opinion, or experience the story of 7 until after they experience this whole thing.
Right.
Because for them, it'll be a supplemental material. If you played and started Remake, and hopefully I haven't spoiled anything, but I've given a lot of spoiler warnings. Enjoy the Remake for what it is. Don't go back and play 7. Don't play the compilation. Don't see Advent Children until after. All this stuff makes a million times more sense after.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, don't do it.
Yeah. No, that.
Just enjoy the Remake for what it is.
Yeah.
Go play something else or beat hard mode. But
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like right now, like I'm tempted enough to go back and at least watch like the playthrough or cinematics of like
yeah,
Crisis Core and all
look
that.
for a
Yeah.
playthrough of Crisis Core.
Yeah.
Rewatch Advent Children complete.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot more insight now, and you're
Yeah.
gonna see things now, even in those where I watched a replay of Crisis Core's cutscenes. I'm just like, this is crazy how much of this plays into what, because I watched a lot up to Zach's final moments,
Mm-hmm.
and especially right after I beat Remake, I was like, I need to watch Crisis Core cutscenes because I need a little more feedback on the Zach stuff because this is all throwing me for a loop right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And episode 2, Remake 2, whatever they call it, which I hope they subtitle differently. Like, honestly, they should. Remake is a subtitle. It's not the title, or it's not like saying what it is.
Yeah.
We all thought it was, and once you beat the game as someone who played it before, Remake is a subtitle.
Yeah. And it means something completely different than all of us were going
Exactly.
into it thinking it was. Yeah.
And when I realized that after being, it's like, Remake doesn't mean they remade the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they remade the game, they remade the systems, everything from scratch. In essence, it kind of is a remake. Remake means something very different because it also stands for the plot.
Mm-hmm.
History and the plot is also being remade at the same time.
Right.
And that's the biggest takeaway from like this episode.
Yeah.
I'm hoping episode 2 is called something completely different, like, hey, like Final Fantasy 7, like multiverse or something, like they'll figure
Genesis,
out a better
whatever.
title.
Like.
Don't call it Genesis because there's an enemy in Crisis Core called Genesis.
Right. Yeah.
So that leads to weird history
Yeah.
stuff too in
Mm-hmm.
there. So, but it's but that's the thing. It's just like there's a lot of other things too. So,
Mm-hmm.
so Remake episode 2 may be a split story game.
Right.
I thought it's like, oh, we're like, this is the part of 7 that's a little bit light in content. If it was only one storyline happening, I'd say yes. We now have to experience 2 storylines at the same time
Mm-hmm.
because Zach's storyline, is it playable? Is it not? We don't really know, but we have to experience it now because there's no way for them to rectify this timeline and other, because also the dog on all the propaganda is a different dog in Zach's timeline,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't realize until someone mentioned it in another video I watched, because weeks later I'm like, this is still blowing my mind. I need to see what other people were thinking about this and where my thoughts resonate. It's just like, oh yeah, the packaging that flies by when
Yeah,
Zach
the
survives
potato chips. Yeah, the potato chip package.
it
Yeah.
has a different dog on it than the ones you've seen on all the spray paints.
Mm-hmm.
That one was like one of those weird, annoying, barky dogs. But on the everything else, it's a beagle.
Right. Oh,
The
so this one
dog,
was like
so
more like a Chihuahua?
it not a Chihuahua, but it was like one of those like small kind of fluffier dogs. I
I
guess
have to look
almost
at it
like
again.
a
Yeah.
not a Yorkie, but yeah, one of those like small fuzzy
Huh.
dogs. But it's like when you see it, it's just like that's not. It's like yeah, that's not the same dog. I'm just like, oh shoot,
I didn't even
you
notice.
have two timelines coexisting. Zach died in the timeline they're in, but what they did caused a multiverse ripple effect, and now the multiverse has split.
Hmm.
There are timelines where Zach died. There's probably timelines where Cloud didn't survive.
Mm.
There's a timeline where potentially both of them are alive because Zach carried Cloud
Carried
into
Cloud.
Midgard.
Yep.
But
Hmm.
does Cloud live in that timeline because did Cloud only survive because Zach's spirit went into him?
Right.
Like there's so many questions. Did Zach of that timeline run into Aerith and finally get to be with her because you get to see their relationship bloom in Crisis Core? So, and that's the thing. It's like you also have an Aerith who knew she was also completely in love with Zach, but also knew she can't fall in love with
That with
Cloud
Cloud.
because she knows what happens if she does fall in love with Cloud because she saw Advent Children. Some way, shape, or form, she saw Advent Children, and she saw how destroyed and devastated he truly was
Uh-huh.
about her death and how much he blamed himself for it.
Right. Right. Now I wonder why I
So
didn't get that cutscene.
yeah, I guess you didn't get your interest in either of them up high enough.
That's interesting. Well, I guess it
Got a,
goes into like.
got a dating sim at homie. I committed to one and one only.
You know
The
what it
flower
was?
girl.
I kept splitting it. I kept splitting it. I
Yeah.
remember, yeah, because I
See
remember,
when you
yeah.
well, if you do, you could always go back and replay those scenes and get it fully one way or the other. But check out the Aerith cutscene. It's online.
Okay.
It's quicker than just playing it,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's easier
it
that way. But
it just when you see her talk, it's like Cloud. You can't like the one thing you can't do is fall in love with me
hmm
at all. And it's tough because to this day we still don't know. Was it Cloud who actually fell in love with her? Is it Zach's spirit in him that made him fall in love with her?
hmm
Did he still hold those feelings of love for her even though he finally pieced himself back together later on in the game? It's just like
right.
there's so many things about it, and it's just like and that's why she gave that warning because I think she knew it's a lot of all of it.
Wow.
He did fall in her. Part of him did fall in her because of Zach being his spirit being in there, and Zach was also in love with her.
Yeah,
So it's just like it just built up, and it's just like, yeah, it's just like I get it.
that's
But it's
crazy.
tough too because Zach's Cloud's also like love is split between two people.
Two people. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Wow.
Like, yeah, the player could control it, but in canon, it's split evenly between two people for different reasons in different ways.
Right. That's insane.
But she was like, no, you can't. The one thing I'm asking you is do not fall in love with me.
Mm.
Like, I know you're gonna come and get me. There's nothing I could do about that. You're gonna do what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
Just don't fall in love with me.
that's nuts. That's nuts. Um, Val says dating sim FF edition. I noticed you guys were talking about VR and all that. That could be the VR title right there.
That's true.
Make a VR Final Fantasy dating
FF
sim.
waifu game with all the waifus from all the
With
Final
from
Fantasies.
all of them, all of them. That would be amazing. That would
Shoot,
be
if it
truly
was from
amazing.
all of them, shoot, who would be my waifu? Ooh,
That's
that's a good question to end the night with. Oof.
that. I think I already have my answer.
I have mine too. I remembered who I'm always loyal to. It's
Okay,
Terra
Terra.
from
Interesting.
6.
Okay.
Yep, it's Terra
I
because at
like.
the end of the day, she went through a lot of shit, but she was able to get it all together at the end to help save the world,
Okay.
despite being an outcast.
Nice. Nice. I would probably go with Renoa.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
That it's that dog, man. Can't it's Angelo. He just wins it over for everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, look, if I could have any Final Fantasy pet, it would be Angelo. Obviously, that
Mm,
dog, I kill for him.
nice. Nice. Nice.
But yeah, no, it's just Terra. It's like something about Terra.
Nice.
Especially since I played also the City of Fighting games and I got to see more of her personality shine.
That makes sense. Yeah, that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
Lightning's a close second because Lightning, like, she's the kind who don't put up with anyone's
Hmm.
BS. But
Yeah. No, this was good, man. This was a good recap, and like again, really gives more in-depth insight of the game.
Yes.
Because if you were like me, I'm sure there were moments where you were a little confused or wondering
Oh
why
yeah.
was this beat happening this so soon early in the game, or where did
Yes.
these whispers come from? Because I was always wondering about that. When
Yeah.
you brought up the whole Biggs and Wedge, and like even at the end when I saw him in the bed, I was like, wait a
Well,
minute, you're like
what?
what?
Yeah. What really proved it to me is why are they flying into the pillar?
Yeah,
These dudes are trying to maintain fate. That's
right,
when I
right, right.
knew. And what drove it home was when Jesse threw the grenade
Mm-hmm.
and they got in her way.
Yeah.
That proved to me right there. Says like there's a chance she could survive.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal right now is to eliminate any possibility of that chance.
Yeah.
Honestly, she may not have survived because she ate a
Oh,
grenade and
she
was
ate it.
still on there.
Yeah, she ate it. Yeah.
Like Biggs surviving confuses me too because he was still on there,
Mm-hmm.
but he just passed out. That
Yeah.
means someone got in there and got him out.
Yeah.
She was much higher up in the tower and she ate a grenade. I highly doubt she survived,
Yeah.
but her glove was on the table, so you can't say never yet.
Right. That's true.
Poor Wedge, though. He,
He may have bit it.
yeah, because
Yeah.
they put him into that elevator shaft that high up because he was in the 60s of floors.
Yeah. He may have bit it, and that's them again trying to maintain the whole timeline and all that.
Yeah,
But
that was cleanup duty. It's like, oh,
yeah.
we have a loose end right here. Let's go
Yeah.
back and clean this up.
Yeah.
The
But
other cool part was you actually got to see more of a full Avalanche
that's
because
true.
Avalanche was mentioned a lot, and 7 makes you think Avalanche was the group you saw only.
Right.
But it's like, and they did all these things and all these bad things. It's like, well, no. Avalanche is actually a much bigger organization, which you saw in other games,
Right.
but you never actually got to see in the original. So you never knew Avalanche was as big until like the compilation of Final Fantasy.
Right. 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 Right.
And even then, you don't see how big Avalanche is
Mm-hmm.
until before Crisis, which only came out in Japan.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah,
And
man.
again, I think now hearing you explain and fill in the gaps, it makes me appreciate the game even more so now. Like not that I didn't already, but it makes it a little bit more,
Mhm.
you know, like wow, this is really what is happening, and it makes me want
They
that.
tailored this game to try and make as many people happy as possible,
Yeah.
but then they found a way to find the 7 purists who have been along the way with 7
Hmm.
everything they wanted and more, which
Yeah.
makes me excited that we're getting an anniversary of 7. It is hitting the big 3-0 next year.
Hmm.
Wait, 3-0? No, 90
No, wait.
no, it's
97, right?
25.
25.
It's hitting 25 starting in
5. Right, right, right,
2022,
right, right.
actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, 2021, 2022, because they
Hmm.
really got it in like late 96, early
I
97, I
want to say
believe.
97.
Well, 97 it came in the US for sure. I know that without a doubt. But I'm trying to remember when it dropped in Japan because that'll decide when but either way,
Either
they're
way,
gonna start announcing anniversary stuff for it.
yeah.
Rumblings are Crisis Core is gonna get the Final Fantasy Type Zero treatment where it gets a full on like HD remaster with new models, even though the cutscenes will still be the same.
They'll be the
Or
same.
who knows, they may go back and update the cutscenes because a lot of the cutscenes appeared in Advent Children.
Hmm.
Actually, a lot of the cutscenes in 7 Remake appeared in Advent Children. There's certain cutscenes that are literal, not rehashes, but remasters of those scenes, especially the Zack scenes when he's about to fight everything.
So yeah, I will agree with the Zack scene because that looked so familiar to me, and it kind of
Everything
threw me
leading to
off.
it, it's like
Yeah.
they polished it. They polished it a bit. They added like they made the models a little bit slimmer and made the voices work for the new voice actors.
Uh-huh.
But that scene was pretty much footage-wise used almost frame from exact frame, except for whatever cleanups and rework they did on it. Because they probably have all the CG footage. They just reworked
They
it
just
for
reworked
what
it,
they
right?
needed.
Right, right, right. That makes sense.
But to the T, that was the same
Hmm.
scene, beat by beat. I'm just like, wait, why? Well, that confused me too. Why were we seeing Zach
Yeah, that threw
in a
me
point that
completely
made
off.
no sense?
Yeah,
It was so out of place.
yeah.
And then when you get to the end of the battle and everything plays out, and you're like, oh, that's why you showed Zach. This has long running implications because does Zach somehow get jumped forward into their universe? Is the final battle taking place across the multiverse where you have to see Sephiroth defeated in 2 or 3 different universes?
Hmm.
Does he have to be defeated in time with the original Seven's universe, along with the remakes universe, along with Zach's universe?
Right, right.
It's like, does Sephiroth have to be defeated by all these people in timelines at the same exact time in order to save everything or stop him?
That's crazy. That is
Who
crazy.
knows? Wait for episode 2 in full development now.
I know, right? Well, yeah, they speeded things up on
Yeah,
development side because
as of
they,
today, they're speeding up certain things up because I think they realized they have more of the assets than they realized they needed.
yeah.
That's great
Hmm.
for us because we don't have to wait as long. I think it's still going to be 2022, the year of the anniversary for sure.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling we're going to see a crisis. Like I think 2022 is going to be the year of Final Fantasy VII again, because during the last the last big anniversary, which was 15,
Hmm.
or yeah, wait, no, 2007, which was 10 years. That's when they started releasing the compilation.
Hmm.
So we're
Yeah.
due
So
for another big one, especially with the remake happening.
right.
I have a feeling we're gonna see a remaster of Crisis Core. We'll probably see a remaster of Dirge of Cerberus. I wouldn't be surprised if they're bundled together as a 2-pack
Hmm.
because they're not enough game by themselves. Well, Crisis Core could be, but it's not enough game by themselves to sell for a full retail price. You bundle them together, though, you're more likely to get people to bite. I wouldn't be surprised they do that, and then they include the re-release of Advent Children Complete, because you could put that in one case and have all of it. They did that with 15, where they released 15 and the movie for 15 in the same Blu-ray case.
Right. No, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So Final Fantasy VII was actually released January 31st, 97 in Japan.
Barely missed 96.
Barely missed 96. And then it came out here in October of that year.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
timeline makes a lot of sense to me because I
Yep.
remember around that time, that's when
I actually got it as
everyone
a
was talking
birthday
about.
present from Toys R Us because I saw it on TV. I was like, oh my gosh, that game looks amazing, because all they showed on the commercials were the cutscenes. Stupid young me
Yeah.
doesn't know what a cutscene is compared to in game.
Yeah. No, I
And yet
remember.
I
Yeah.
saw it,
Hmm.
played it, and I was like, oh man, I got to keep getting to the cutscenes and stuff. And then I actually got enamored with the world, characters, and everything. I was like, oh, they're funny and hilarious, and oh, there's a lot of cursing.
Yeah. No, I remember I bought it because I saw a friend play it and I was like, I need to get this game and
Yeah,
picked it up.
man.
Yeah. So, and I still have my
Me,
original copy.
it was. I saw them commercials and good marketing. Show only the commercial cutscenes.
Right. Well, I feel like it was for me, it was the cutscenes and the music. I thought the music was
Yeah,
very, very like attractive, you know?
music I liked, but I didn't have a full appreciation for music until like playing it and the boss battle. Oh man, when it first drops,
Hmm.
that guitar like sound, it's like,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
and
So
that's
good.
one of them. You need to listen to the soundtrack of Crisis Core as well too, because the remixes
Hmm.
and the original songs too, because Crisis Core has a lot of original songs that weren't in any of 7.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But the remixes of the 7 stuff, it's like, oh my gosh. That's one of the things I got mad about Final Fantasy 13 2 about. Wait, no, not 13 2. Final Fantasy 10 2,
Tend to. Yeah.
because they had none of the music from the first game, and the music in 10 is top notch.
Hmm.
And I just didn't feel connected to 10 2 a bit because of the music. Like, I didn't care about the whole dress sphere. It was like Charlie's Angel meets Final Fantasy. Aspects of that was fun, and it was the job class system.
Yeah.
But it's just not having the music for some reason, just it didn't do it for me. That's what was hurting 10 2 for me. Gotta keep music cohesive because it's part of the
It's
world.
part of the world. Yeah. And it's part of the experience, especially like as
Yeah.
you play through it. So like,
Finding those jukeboxes in Remake. It's like, oh man, hearing the Cosmo Canyon one too, in the like stupid tunnel between Sector 6 and the playground.
yeah.
It's like, oh man, it's just like when I heard that's like, and it's like a jazzy verse, like dun, 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 dun. It's like, oh, okay, I see you. Yeah, man, I
No,
made sure to get all those albums
yeah,
real quick.
I was actually surprised I missed two of them. So I need to
Yeah, I
figure
missed
out.
one of them too. It was
Yeah,
early on in the game in Midgar
yeah.
because I couldn't figure out where it was hidden. I figured out like when I did hard mode, it's like, oh, it was
Hmm.
here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm debating if I ever wanted to play it through again in hard mode. I'll think
No,
about it,
I
but
mean, there were things that add to more story elements of it, of the background
mhm,
of the world, but
mhm.
it's like I'm already imagining the later fights because I already fought something that was nightmarishly difficult to fight.
Oh yeah.
And this was me making full use of swapping, teamwork, freaking getting his stagger bar full and everything. And I still
Hmm.
had a hard time because that thing beat me like 800 times. And then I just stopped. And then one night I just said, oh, let's just do it on hard mode because I don't have anything I really want to play.
Right.
And then I slaughtered him because I was perfectly in sync that day,
Hmm.
but he still took Tifa out as usual.
Yeah, yeah. That's always been annoying, but I get it.
Glass cannon.
Yep.
You would think Barrett, but no, it's
No,
Tifa. Tifa's the
it's
glass cannon.
Tifa. It's Tifa. Yeah.
It's like packs a
Um.
punch just to get knocked out by the same punch 2 minutes later.
Exactly. Exactly. No, man, awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
And again, it's really great to have this like recap of, and a game both you and I have completed and that we could easily
Oh
talk
yeah.
about. And I think that's one of the main reasons